I'm Ron. I'm the program manager at Frontline Paper. And Frontline Paper, we're formerly known as Combat Paper New Jersey. Some of you may have heard of the Combat Paper Project, which started back in 2007. And then in 2011, a couple of the vets that were facilitators of the Combat Paper Project started Combat Paper New Jersey. And so from 2011 until I think it was 2018 that we changed our name to Frontline Paper. We were operating as Combat Paper New Jersey. And what we are is we're a veteran-led arts project that we say through the transformative process of turning uniform to paper, we provide a platform for veterans to communicate their stories. We say we deconstruct our uniforms, we reclaim them as paper, and we tell our stories on that paper. We've worked at universities, VFWs. Up until the pandemic, we worked regularly. We had the last year we just had 2 workshops. We were doing 4 workshops at Walter Reed Medical Center, as well as Fort Belvoir. And so we go wherever there's veterans who are interested in experiencing this process of turning paper into uniform. In fact, we were really lucky. One of the program people from Wounded Warriors out in Phoenix contacted us a couple months ago and asked us if we could do a virtual workshop. And we said, absolutely. And so we've done our first virtual paper making workshop. Briefly, what we do is, we turn these ACUs, we turn what I used to call camis when I was in the Marine Corps in the 80s. We turn our combat uniforms into paper. Let me grab the paper so you can see. It goes from this uniform to this paper. And then on that paper, we make art. We make, some people write on it, some people draw on it. And that's the thing about this paper. It's, we actually had a woman who sewed on it. It takes pretty much all different types of mediums. You can work in everything from pencil and charcoal to silkscreen and etching. In fact, later on, we'll put up a link for you to be able to go ahead and see some artwork. This is some of the artwork that I've done at home. This is Wilfred Owen. He was a World War I. He was a lieutenant in the British Army, and he wrote this beautiful poem. It's called Dulce et Decorum pro patria mori. But so we start with this uniform, and then what we need to do is we need to get it into small little postage stamp sized pieces. And then that goes into what's called a Hollander Beater. And the Hollander Beater has a drum on it. And on the drum, there are these square blades. And we fill that with water, and then we start adding these pieces of uniform into it. And it spins at a really high speed. And what it does is you would think because it has blades on it that it's cutting it, but it's not. It's just crushing it. It's forcing the fibers apart. It's just a further extension of the deconstruction of the uniform. We're not chopping it up. We're not destroying it. We're just deconstructing it. We're pushing the fibers apart, and those fibers take on water when we add it, and then we add it to a vat. I have a vat over here, and I'm going to show you today the pulling of a sheet of paper. I don't know. I'll try to show you this pulp. And so that's a uniform pulped. The Hollander Beater does does exactly, you know, that term beaten to a pulp. Well, that's what the Hollander Beater does. It beats this uniform to a pulp. And then we reclaim that pulp. So I've put the pulp into a vat here. And what I'm doing right now, moving my hands around in the vat, is called charging the vat. It's just so you get all that pulp sort of evenly dispersed into the vat. And then I have this is called a mold, and this is a decal. And with this mold and decal, I'm going to reclaim that uniform as a sheet of paper. So after I've pulled that sheet of paper out of the vat, I'm just doing a little diggle back and forth, and that's just to get those fibers to interlock. Right now, what this is just a big mat of fiber. Right now, it's about 98% water, and everything we do from here on out, aside from the art making, is going to be concerned with getting that water out of it, drying that paper. I pulled my decal off. And you may have heard the term deckled edge. And that's what this will end up having. And like I said, so this has like 98% water in it. It's crazy the amount of water that's still in here. And so what I'm doing now is I'm draining some of that water out. And you kind of need to do that because the amount of water, if I were to try to, what I'm going to do after this is called couching it. And it comes from the French coucher, to lay down. English bastardization of a French word. For some reason, they figured they couldn't say coucher, so they're going to say couch. So after I've drained some of that water out now, yeah, the camera's pretty good on this. I'm going to lay this down on this material here. It's called a Pellon. It's essentially interfacing. Anybody who sews knows about interfacing. You should put it in between layers of fabric in order to make it a little stiffer. In the old days, this would have been felt, and today felt is way too expensive. So somebody along the line figured out that they could use this stuff called interfacing. And what I'm doing now with this rag is I'm going to absorb some of the water out of the back of it. And I don't always do that, but because I'm going to work on this sheet of paper right after I lift the mold from it, I want to get as much water off of there as I can. But in a normal situation, I wouldn't necessarily do that. I wouldn't get all that water out of there. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to make a pulp print, which is one of the methods and mediums that we use making art. And I wonder should I try to show you a close-up of this sheet of paper? I really want to, so I'm going to lift my iPad here. I don't know. Travis, can you see that sheet of paper well?
Yep, maybe down a little bit.
Okay.
Like tilted a little.
Yeah. And the light's not quite great here, so, but you can see all the threads in that, maybe. And that's there's a sheet of paper. And to me, it always blew my mind, you know, in the beginning. From that uniform, from one uniform, we're able to get anywhere between 35 and 45 sheets of paper, which, you know, if you look at this, it doesn't appear to be that much paper. But when you break it apart into all of its fibers, it's pretty wild. So, So the way we make pulp prints, and if you end up taking this course, one of the things I think may have been put on the course list is photographs, digital images maybe. And if it's not on the course list, we'll maybe redo that. But you can bring digital images with you, then we can make screens, and you can make pulp prints from images that you want to use. What I have here is a Frontline paper screen. Go back to my roots. I have a Marine Corps logo. And when I was in the Marine Corps, I was in tanks. And this is actually the tank that I was in. This is an M60. At least it looks like one to me. M60A1 Rise Passive. And so with those, I'm going to make an image onto this sheet of paper. Because the paper is wet, I want to make sure that my screen is wet. I'm just taking my hand and making sure that it's well seated on the sheet of paper, rubbing it down a little bit. And we'll cover this part of the paper that we're not going to. And then, so what I've got here in these bottles is pigmented, finely beaten pulp, cotton pulp. So it's just straight white cotton, and we beat it for hours and hours and hours. I think it went 10 or 12 hours. And then we add something that's called retention agent to it, and then we add pigment to it. And the pigment adheres to this finely beaten pulp. And strange as it may sound, that you're able to actually spray it out of these bottles. So I'm going to use black for the Frontline paper logo. And I'm hoping you'll let me know, Travis, whether you can actually see this image or whether I have to, or whether I need to move the camera.
And we can see what you're doing so far. Oh yeah, that's great.
And can you see the Frontline paper on the paper?
Yep.
Great. Awesome. All right. And so this pulp printing actually has, I think it's the longest history of art making on this paper. I'm not sure why. One of the founders of the combat paper project, this guy Drew Matat, he had learned this process, and he wasn't a veteran, but he worked with this guy Drew Cameron, who was an Iraq veteran. Drew Matat had a paper making studio in Burlington, and I think Drew Cameron was maybe still in I think he was still in the Army. He was still active duty. And he saw this advertisement, you know, to come over to this Green Door studio in Burlington. And so he did. And he ended up working there quite a bit. And Drew Matat actually left him in charge while he went and got his MFA out in Chicago. And one day they were on the phone. They're talking about paper making. And he suggested, why don't you put your uniform? Why don't you pulp your uniform? And that's how it started. And then Drew Cameron actually had somebody videotape him, and they cut the uniform from his body and made it into paper. But when they took this on road, this pulp spray was something that Drew Matat was working with in his MFA studies. And so it became the main method of making art. Because it's very immediate. You know, you pull your sheet of paper, you cooch it, you throw down your screen on it, and maybe, you know, during the deconstruction of the uniform, you know, that time around the table, maybe you've been thinking, you know, you've been talking about something, and you remembered some photo you had, or you're thinking about some image you want to do, and then we make a screen for it, and then, you know, immediately after you pull that sheet of paper, you get it cooched, and you can start creating art on it. You know, for people like us, at least me, I think most of us, you know, we're all about immediate gratification, right? We want it now. Let's do it. And the process begins, you know. So, and one of the other beautiful things about this pulp spray process is what you're doing is actually embedded. This is getting embedded into that sheet of paper, you know, because the finely beaten cotton is grabbing hold of that pulp on the Pellon, and this big one here. And afterwards, after it dries, I was looking all around. I couldn't find this piece of artwork. I know it's here. It's just I'm a bit scatterbrained sometimes. But after you've done your Pulp Print, and you'll be able to see these examples online when we give you that link. You can go in with paint, and you can paint on top of this. You can add things to it. You know, if you decide that you didn't like something, you can completely paint it out. Up short. And there you have it. Like I say, once dried, take it and go in with some paint, touch up things that I don't. You can use a pen. You know, you can use all.
I think you're breaking up a little bit.
Am I? How about now? You know, sometimes I get away from the. Or is it getting pixelated?
It says you got low bandwidth, but it seems to be working again. So it's been pretty good the whole time.
Yeah, probably moving around. It didn't help it at all. My issue is that normally I would be on Wi-Fi, but I'm so far from my Wi-Fi I have to run it through the cellular. You know, because it's much more dependable than the Wi-Fi at this point. And where I am, I'm in my driveway of my house. Anyways, and that's it, you know. And I got to be honest with you, I'm actually pretty happy with what this is. You know, sometimes it's a little hit or miss, you know, because you're covering everything up and you're spraying your stuff, and you know, if all out there artists, sometimes you have to wait for that reveal to really know how well you did, you know. And this I'm pretty happy with. Yeah, and that's so. This is one of the things that you'll be able to do. You know, the one thing you're definitely going to be able to do is you're going to make paper. You know, and for me, that's the most awesome part of this. I didn't actually have my uniform to cut up when I made paper for the first time. But eventually I did come upon an 80s era woodland cami. It was exactly like the one I wore, you know. And it's just really, really meaningful, you know, to be able to make paper from the uniform that I wore and tell my story and let people know, you know, who I am. It's making something concrete out of all of these memories and thoughts and emotions. When you make something concrete out of that, it somewhat it clears it up, you know. So, anyways, that's what we do.
Hey, yeah. I mean, what do you think the most beneficial part of this process is for vets kind of dealing with anything they got going on?
Well, I'll tell you, the most beneficial thing that I get out of it, and probably to a man and woman at our Sunday workshop. So we have a workshop every Sunday at the Print Center in New Jersey, in Branchburg. Of course, in this time, COVID, we're having to do it virtually. It's a camaraderie. It's the common bond. You know, it is that sitting around the table. And, you know, sometimes the conversation may be just about baseball, it might be about my kids. But then it might open up to something that, you know, I experienced. And it's
Might have lost you.
I sit around the table with those guys. Totally accepted. I was completely accepted, you know, and I felt like, I don't know. For me, it wasn't so much that I felt like I was home, but I was home with guys I knew and women I knew, you know. So, yeah, it's the camaraderie. It's the common bond that we have.
I imagine you get a lot of people that come and take your workshops that don't identify themselves as artists or as artists, which I think can kind of be a pretty intimidating experience to jump into something at first. I mean, do you get a lot of people that just, you know, really never had any of this experience before kind of jumping in and doing these things?
Sure, we do. Very often that people say, well, I'm not an artist. And as my buddy Walt likes to say, he said, you may not be an artist, but you got a story to tell. And, you know, it's funny, one of our regular members at our Sunday workshop, Jim, he had not made a piece of art in his entire life. And he was 70 years old when he came to the workshop. He's one of our most prolific artists today. It's mind blowing. You know, I mean, this guy is churning that out. We're doing something what they call a postcard project right now. And Jim, this guy who had never made art in his life, comes to the workshop at 70 years old. One of the things he did, he won this first prize in this National Veterans Art Show. But he's made over 100 postcards during this pandemic to send out to people. He's just, you know, prolific beyond prolific. It's crazy. So absolutely. And it's one of the reasons that we bring a lot of these screens with us, you know, so that if you don't consider yourself an artist, we have screens that you can use, and we'll help you. We'll help you figure it out, you know. We'll show you the way to tell your story. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I feel like a lot of people can get pretty intimidated when you're like, let's go make art. And if you haven't done it most people haven't made art since they were in like elementary school. So it really is. We get people Touchstone that are intimidated by it. But then again, I mean, even in a place like Touchstone, it's that community that makes it such a good thing. And this is like a really specific community of people who is probably great to have, get veterans together to talk about their stories and really be able to put them on paper and share them. I know at the end of some of your workshops, you do kind of like an exhibition to kind of,
Oh, yeah.
that they made.
We will be. Yeah. And that's what we're hoping. Generally, at the end of all of our week-long workshops, we do have an exhibition. And that's actually one of the most transformative and cathartic parts of the workshop, actually, is that after you've gone through the process of deconstructing the uniform, and then, we'll do writing prompts and you'll make art and stuff like that, and you'll make something concrete, and then it's hanging it up on the wall, and you can say, wow, yeah, that's me, that's part of me, and I'm sharing that with other people, and other people look at it and say, wow, that's great, yeah.
Yeah, I know sharing stories can be really intimidating. I mean, using art as a language to express any emotion that you're dealing with, it's kind of hard to get moving, but once you do, it's really rewarding, especially being able to share that with, a group of individuals and then actually see what you made out of something that is about your life and kind of how people react to it is kind of like a really great experience that I think everybody should really try to do it once in their life.
And the other thing I want to stress, though, in the workshop, nobody's forced to do anything. We have people that come with their uniforms, and then they decide, I don't want to cut up my uniform. You don't have to cut up your uniform. If you don't want to hang your artwork at the end in the show, you don't have to hang your artwork up. There's no requirements here. What it really is it's going to be a week where you're going to be with a bunch of people that, hopefully you'll be able to connect with and find some build a little bit of community for yourself, Yeah.
I mean, is that kind of the main purpose of Frontline Paper, is just kind of build that community?
Yes, it is. And that's part of our expansion to the family and to the greater society, allowing, some of our workshops are just closed workshops for veterans only, but more and more we've been having workshops where we're opening it up to family members. There's lots of moms out there. There's lots of wives, children, brothers and sisters, that have their stories about their brothers or their sisters or daughters or sons, or dads and moms, that they want to tell. We've been getting a lot of uniforms sent to us from children of World War II veterans. They're all getting to the age where they're moving out of their houses and they got the box upstairs with dad's uniform in it, and they don't know what to do with it, and they send it to us. And we make paper out of it and we send them paper back. Yeah, it's a big community, It doesn't just affect the person who went through it.
Is there anything else you want to talk about Frontline before we wrap it up?
I think I've said most everything. I hope there's a lot of people out there that want to come and experience this process with us. We've got the facilitator that's coming next August, God willing. It's a long way off. He's an amazing artist, an amazing man, and he brings a lot to the table. So I can guarantee a really fulfilling workshop, whoever should come.
Great. Well, we look forward to having you out to Touchstone. For everybody kind of listening in, Frontline will be joining us next summer on August 9th through the 13th for a week-long workshop, kind of doing a little bit of what Ron has talked about throughout this. If you check on our website, our intentions is to keep this program free for veterans. The information is not up on our website yet, but hopefully all of it will be available no later than January 1st. If you want to kind of keep up to date with what's going on with that, please check out touchstonecrafts.org and kind of keep checking in to see when that information gets up. And again, we really look forward to having Frontline out to Touchstone, and a big thanks to Ron for joining us and talking a little bit about what they do at Frontline and a little bit about the organization. So thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.